All right, well, we made one video in a dyno room and not in this building, but turns out this is where I do work, so this is where the videos come from, including the sunshine in the evening. So the 19 Mustang is doing good enough. I'm leaving it alone for now. See if I can not blow it up for a bit, and we're going back to this thing. Oh. This is my 88 Fox body. I think I've owned it 4 times. I bought it with a stock automatic 2.3 liter, I think, 20 some years ago. And there's a lot going on here, but it's all going to change again. And what I did is, at that time, I swapped the big block 460 into it. Pretty much straight out of a motorhome. And I put a mild cam in it, performer RPM, no performer intake, so it fit the stock hood, and went racing. C6, that was fun. Then eventually we built a good 473, which is a 60 over, some compression, some 429 heads, and the right stall converter for the C6, and went some more racing. Then I sold that to a friend, put twin turbos on it in the configuration you've seen in that quick shot there. And it made some ridiculous torque, but it was early in my turbo years, and I did not realize how undersized those turbos were. They were a pair of HY35 2001 Cummins turbos. And I thought back then, well, 2 turbos off of a 5.9 should be perfect on a 7.5. No, it had a lot of back pressure. It made a lot of torque. And then it had a boost control issue on a race and broke a bunch of stuff, and it got parked. I bought it back, blown up, and put a 351 in it. And the 351 was a little better match for the turbos. Got that working. I sold it to a friend. He raced it for a while and needed some more love. I bought it back and worked it out just over 500 horsepower, somewhere in there. Lots of torque, fun smoke show machine. Then removed it and went and swapped the Coyote in it. And the Coyote didn't like those turbos either, so even at 5 liters, we had to push pretty hard to make any power out of that. And high back pressure situation, 600 horsepower, and the first gen Coyote connecting rods said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come out right here. And you can see that, not good. So this happened on dyno. I think we had a video up of that, one of the early videos there. And so that really wasn't the actual game plan. You know, when is it ever time to throw a connecting rod up the side? But I was just trying to use turbos out before I took them off. I have an Edelrock supercharger for the Coyote that I want to put on. So we didn't bother with working on that too much longer. It got put on the side while I got the 19 up and started working on a short block. Actually, kind of a long block for this car. So I took a Gen 3 short block, put some forged pistons in it, and just took some Gen 1 heads and put Coyote valve springs and, Boss valve springs and new valves and everything in it, because it was one of those first gen Coyote heads that had the old tulip valve problem. And so we made a good set of heads, even though they're first gen, it's what I had, so I wasn't going to pay a bunch of money for a more different casting. And now it should be a pretty stout little short block. Gen 3 should be able to take whatever that Edelbrock blower can throw at it. And we'll get rid of all this rear mount turbo, and we'll put in that. Then we'll put this back together and get it all tuned up. And we're trying to make about 700 rear wheel horse through the T56 with just methanol and pump gas. And it should be a good time. But that's going to be a bit of work yet, so that's our next project. continuation of the project. This is not even close to a show car. It is just a fun Fox body beater that doesn't have critical rust. It's got some little bits of problems here and there, but nothing for actual rust. It's just got a lot of years of sitting around and getting raced and dented up, and the rear quarters have been opened up for, I think, a 29.5-inch tire, and they were not opened up with care, so we'll say they're baseball bat roll style. So we're going to reuse these 3-inch tailpipes. They're fairly expensive, they're almost new, and they go into the back of the old hull sets right here. This is cast iron, so we're going to cut it off here and build new exhaust from here all the way up to these headers. We are going to reuse these stalker headers that I cut up to fit. We're just going to run 3-inch from here instead of 2.5. When I had, well, the Coyote in my 14 Mustang, when I went from these headers before I cut them up to long tubes and 3-inch exhaust from 2.5, I only gained like 20 horsepower at about 650 horse level. So that wasn't worth it. So the clearance of these, the ease of access of these after I cut them all up, everything's pretty easy to work with on those now, that I'm going to just keep using those, and then see if I can make the 700 horsepower number through the stock manifolds and the dual 3-inch exhaust. I don't think I'll have any trouble. Anyways, that's the build idea. Obviously this motor has to come out because it already has some issues. So that's the next play, is get this motor out. Well, there she be. Intercooler turbo system removed. Very dusty engine bay from sitting all winter. Gonna pull this motor out. But I think the car got a little bit lighter because the turbo kit is on the floor. So intercooler was all just 2-inch from turbo to intercooler. It was probably sized for about 600 horse, pretty nice. Probably for a smaller displacement combo, but these two turbos way at the back did some work. Weird, they spooled good on a 351. Didn't spool very good on a Coyote. Yet still restrictive on this Coyote, so oh well. 351 had a C6 and a trans brake, so I think you can spool almost anything with the right torque converter. So this is now just gonna go hide somewhere. Someone wants to rear mount their 5-liter and they're creative. This would be really cheap. You might want to put a proper set of T3 turbos in it. But other than that, and that's what the flanges are, you'd have a really good head start on a cheap turbo system. But most likely it'll just hang out and get pilfered for parts on various projects. That's what parts are for sometimes too. Anyways, that is the turbo system out. Now it's time to pull a motor. Well, we are taking the engine out, like we said. Just stopping at a point here to give a little video because, well, this may not look like every other engine extraction. So I got an overhead chain hoist. Pretty simple, but it doesn't have the ability to move right and left. So my thing is kind of put it close to where it's supposed to be and then invent the X and Y axes from the various obstacles in the building. And we're not going to pull hard, but we can move it around 5 or 6 inches right or left without too much effort. We removed the cooling stack, everything from the front. I said we were going at the bottom, but I was going to try to go at the top because I didn't want to take off the clutch line, the drive shaft, the stick shift, the front subframe. But mostly it's kind of weird in a shop like this to get things moved around, and so I kind of have to roll the car after I'm done to get the engine off of this thing. So that means the subframe has to go back on anyways, and wheels. So the subframe had to go down, pretty much unhooked there, to get it off the motor mounts, because the way my setup is with this hydraulic clutch right here, we're basically right in the valve cover, so there's no upward travel available. And taking that thing off the firewall is no fun. It's actually easier to drop 6 bolts out of the subframe. Yeah, so she's almost out. Everything's clear. You can see that compared to typical swap headers, that my cut up factory S197 headers, having the ability to disconnect engine or transmission without removing the header is cheating. No, it's typical of exhaust manifolds, and it's typical of OEM thinking, but it is not typical of swap headers, which obviously will flow better and take more space. But the Cook's headers, for example, you could never do this with the full long tube. So if I can still meet the horsepower goals and have headers that aren't in the way of everything, I'm going to call that a win. Anyhow, we'll get this engine out the rest of the way and start swapping over parts to get the replacement engine in so we can make some power again. So this is what I mean by having to make the car mobile again. So to get the engine, which is on a fixed point, out of the car and away from the car, you kind of have to move the car or the engine, and obviously one has the wheels. So it's out, it's clear. We'll be swapping this all onto a different motor, and then we'll put it back in. So the other problem is this has to get to be a different motor hanging here. So just stuff you don't think about, but a little cart to drop that on, and then roll it around, sneak it through here, which almost fits, and get it out to the door. But then how do I get it into the back of my truck? So then I have to move the car forward all the way once that engine's out of the way, move my chain hoist to that hook in the ceiling. You see the chain coming through the drywall there, and then I can pick it up and put it into the back of my truck. So yeah, it's funny what's really simple when you're in a big shop with a forklift, or at least even a pallet jack helps. But there's always a way to make it work. You can do it at home. It's half the fun, rigging things up and figuring out how to make it happen. Yeah, so we're doing the great motor shuffle right now. So this is the broken one. We've got it on a cart, rolled it off to the side, took the engine crane, or the little chain hoist, and put it up over here. And we've got this one in on the back of my truck. There's just enough room in the back of the Mustang. What could go wrong? And there we go. We have a suspended engine. Put it on the stand. I built this at work, so I just covered it up, brought it home, and then we will do the great swap over of all the external parts and put it in the hole. All right, so here is the replacement motor going in. So it is a 2019 Gen 3 bottom end, the stock bottom end that came out of the other twin turbo car, the one that I heard some pistons in. So I put some Mal drop-in pistons, so it's still 12-to-1 compression, or 12.5, and it has the Gen 1 heads on it, which is what I had, and then we got comp stage 2 supercharger cams on it, and I just put some new chains and Boss tensioners on it, so otherwise it's pretty much Just some stock Coyote stuff arranged in a good order, minus the cams, which were fairly expensive, but it should run good. And this one is the one that blew up, and it was just an F-150 motor, a Gen 1 F-150 motor with nothing done to it, minus just it had the Mustang Gen 1 intake, which is whatever. But anyhow, it had boost. We were twin turboed, rear mount, high back pressure scenario, and you saw the dyno footage. But here's another angle of the damage. Yes, that is the connecting rod trying to push its way out of the crankcase, with the end of it quite missing. So yeah, it's definitely broken. Hoping that we have a little bit better luck with this one. All right, so this is the newer motor, and one of the things that I ran into is I forgot a pilot bearing, so I did the old grease trick and saved the old one. But I actually bought a Ford Mustang timing cover to put on this motor, thinking that the difference between the Mustang and the F-150 was just this boss here, because the supercharger that I plan to put on is based on the Mustang drive system, so I thought I should have a Mustang front cover. Well, I didn't know how different they were. So the Mustang and the F-150 use a different offset in the belt drive, and there's a fine picture of it right there. So this is timing cover. So that sets the distance of the alternator. This is timing cover mounted too, but I'm guessing the tensioner is different for an F-150 than a Mustang. And then obviously the balancer is different. So I don't yet know if the water pump or the water pump pulley is the difference there. We'll get to that when we get there, but right now we're going to put this in the car. I do have the Mustang balancer on the floor over there, but I'm going to try to get this thing in the car right now, and the balancer problem will play out later because I have the whole supercharger installed to do yet at the end of this. And that supercharger is still in another car, so it's a few steps in the way. I think I might get this thing running without the supercharger, make it mobile. Anyways, I'm going to show you how I put a motor in a small shop with a little two-post hoist. The two-post hoist is obviously a luxury. What I don't have is room for a cherry picker engine hoist without making a real mess of it. So with this method, like we said before, just a chain block overhead, and then we use this short strap as engine angle, and when it's hooked up this way to, well, my side-by-side in the other little storage bay there, it actually makes the engine point straight very well. And this one here is to pull the engine off. So right now when I pull the car forward, the engine's a little bit too far this way, so that strap can fix that problem. And the engine is a little bit too far rearward, so that strap can fix that problem. I'll show you how it works. go for a look under here and see how things are going. You can see that the cross member is not even bolted up, but the struts are holding it up, and the friction of the inner control arm bushings are enough to keep it from falling all the way down. I don't know what the camera will show here. Yeah, so we're just coming together here. Got the initial coming in. Looks like it needs to go up a little bit and then go in. But this kind of thing is hard enough without holding the camera, so we will give this another shot. So the back of the cylinder head, the plugs on this side are a little bit no fun. And then there's a bolt-on wire on the back, ground wire on the back of that head. That's also much more fun when the engine's not fully against the firewall. So that gets it in the bay. We still got to get all the bolts hooked up below. But that's kind of where it's supposed to sit. It's not exactly smooth method, but there's worse. And having the headers bolted up before you put it in means you don't have to do them now, which means it's great. Actually, most people don't do these now. Even when they have long tubes. You go up from the bottom when you have long tubes. She runs again. Gen 3 bottom end, Gen 1 top end. Got stage 2 supercharger cams for future upgrades, but you can hear it a little bit in the idle. Coyotes don't really chop. Too much variable cam timing. Still a complete total mess in here. The dual 3-inch exhaust. MagnaFlow knockoff mufflers. No ace pipe right now. Actually, there is. There is an H pipe. The old beater. Seems nice and quiet. Got some oil leaks to fix. So I had to beat the pan up a little bit to get the cross member where I wanted it, to get the engine as low as possible to have any hope of fitting a supercharger under the hood, which is still not that likely. The stock plastics just fit because the hood is rounded up a little bit. So we'll see how that all goes. But anyways, the solution for the oil pan issue is Holly. Now I've looked at this already and it's not impressive. So we got our pickup, we got our underpaid Chinese kid welding. That's the inside, obviously, and that gives me the profile that I need. leaking right here in the old pan, and then it warped the whole rails and the ends of it leak. So hopefully this works out.